The rain hammered against Dr. Liam Sullivan's windshield like bullets, each drop catching his headlights and exploding into 1,000 tiny diamonds before sliding away into the darkness. It was 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in October, and the winding road between Westport and Ridgefield, Connecticut, was completely deserted. Exactly how Liam preferred it after a brutal night shift at Hartford Hospital. 18 hours. That's how long he'd been on his feet, moving between emergency surgeries, critical patients, and the endless parade of human suffering that filled the ER on weekday nights. His hands still trembled slightly from the adrenaline of his last case. A 7-year-old boy who'd been pulled from the Connecticut River, blue and lifeless, until Liam had worked a miracle and brought him back. All Liam wanted now was to get home to his empty colonial house, pour himself 3 fingers of bourbon, take a scalding hot shower, and sleep for 12 hours straight, maybe longer. At 32, he was one of the youngest attending physicians at Hartford, but nights like this made him feel ancient. That's when his headlights caught something that made his heart stop dead in his chest. A figure was walking along the shoulder of the road, in the pouring rain, at nearly 4 in the morning. Liam's first thought was that he was hallucinating from exhaustion. His second thought was that he was seeing a ghost, because the figure was wearing what looked like a wedding dress, a long flowing white gown that was now torn, muddy, and completely soaked through. "What the hell?" Liam muttered, immediately pulling over and throwing his BMW into park. The woman, and it was definitely a woman, didn't even look up as his car stopped 20 feet behind her. She just kept walking, barefoot, hugging herself against the cold October rain. Her dark hair hung in wet ropes around her face, and even from this distance, Liam could see that her feet were leaving bloody footprints on the asphalt. He rolled down his window, rain immediately pelting his face. "Hey, are you okay?" The woman stopped but didn't turn around. Her shoulders were shaking. Whether from cold, exhaustion, or tears, Liam couldn't tell. "Ma'am, you need help," he called out, louder this time. "Please, let me help you." Finally, she turned. Even in the harsh glare of his headlights, even with mascara streaking down her cheeks and her hair plastered to her skull, she was the most beautiful woman Liam had ever seen. High cheekbones, full lips, and green eyes that seemed to hold depths of pain he couldn't begin to fathom. She stared at him for a long moment, and Liam could see her calculating, weighing her options, wondering if the stranger in the expensive car was a threat or salvation. She started, her voice hoarse and barely audible over the rain. I can't. Her knees gave out. Liam was out of his car before she hit the ground, his dress shoes splashing through puddles as he ran to her side. She was conscious, but barely, her skin ice cold and her breathing shallow. Hey, look at me," he said, crouching beside her and automatically checking her pulse. Fast, but steady. "What's your name?" "Harper," she whispered, not meeting his eyes. "Harper Johnson." "Okay, Harper. I'm Dr. Liam Sullivan. You're in shock, probably hypothermic, and you need medical attention immediately." He looked at her feet and winced. They were cut up badly, with pieces of gravel embedded in the flesh. "How long have you been walking?" "I don't know," she said, and Liam could hear the defeat in her voice. Complete, utter defeat. "Hours. Since the wedding." Liam glanced at her torn dress, at the wilted flowers still tangled in her hair, at the way she couldn't seem to stop shaking. "Your wedding?" he asked gently. Harper let out a laugh that sounded more like a sob. "My wedding that never happened." Without another word, Liam scooped her up in his arms. She was lighter than he'd expected, all bones and wet fabric, and she didn't resist as he carried her to his car. "Where are we going?" she asked, as he settled her in the passenger seat and cranked the heat to maximum. "My house," Liam said, pulling off his jacket and wrapping it around her shoulders. "It's about 20 minutes from here. You need dry clothes, medical attention, and a warm bed." Harper stared at him with those incredible green eyes. "Why would you help me?" You don't even know me. I could be anyone. I could be dangerous. Liam met her gaze steadily. Because 3 hours ago, I held a dying child in my hands and watched his mother pray to every god she could think of for someone to save her baby. Tonight, you're that child, and I'm the someone who stopped. And if I'm not worth saving, everyone is worth saving, Liam said simply, putting the car in drive. Especially someone who's been hurt as badly as you have. As they drove through the rain-soaked Connecticut countryside, Harper pressed her face to the passenger window and watched the world blur past. For the first time in hours, maybe months, she felt something other than despair. She felt hope. Harper woke up in a bed that felt like clouds. Sunlight was streaming through tall windows draped in white lace curtains, and she could hear birds singing outside. Actual birds, not the car horns and sirens that had been the soundtrack to her life for the past 5 years. The room was beautiful in an understated way. Warm, hardwood floors, soft blue walls, and furniture that looked like it had been chosen by someone who understood the difference between expensive and elegant. For a moment, Harper forgot everything. The wedding, Frederick, William's face when she'd run, the horrible, crushing realization that she'd thrown away everything for a man who'd never loved her at all. For just a few seconds, she was simply a woman waking up in a beautiful room on a beautiful morning. Then reality came crashing back like a tsunami. She sat up quickly, too quickly, and immediately gasped as pain shot through her feet. Looking down, she saw that both feet were professionally bandaged, wrapped in clean white gauze that spoke of medical expertise. She was wearing a soft cotton nightgown that smelled like lavender and something else, something that might have been hope. On the nightstand beside her was a glass of water, 2 white pills, and a note written in careful handwriting. For the pain. Take with food. You're safe here. Liam. Harper picked up the note and stared at it, her chest tight with an emotion she couldn't name. When was the last time someone had taken care of her like this? When had anyone last looked at her pain, really looked at it, and tried to make it better? She tried to stand and immediately bit back a scream. Her feet felt like they were on fire, every step sending lightning bolts up her legs. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Harper looked up to see Liam standing in the doorway, holding a breakfast tray. In the morning light, she could see him clearly for the first time. He was probably in his early 30s, with brown hair that was slightly too long and intelligent hazel eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He had the kind of face that inspired trust, strong but gentle, confident but not arrogant. How bad is it? Harper asked, looking down at her bandaged feet. You walked approximately 15 miles on rough asphalt, Liam said, setting the tray on the bed beside her. In bare feet, at night, in the rain. Honestly, it's a miracle you didn't get hypothermia or step on glass. He sat in the chair beside the bed, and Harper noticed he'd changed out of his wet clothes into jeans and a simple gray sweater. He looked less like the serious doctor who'd rescued her and more like, well, like someone she could imagine having breakfast with every morning for the rest of her life. The thought startled her. Where had that come from? I made you eggs, Benedict, Liam said, and Harper could smell the rich hollandaise sauce. You need protein and calories. When did you last eat? Harper thought about it. Yesterday morning, I think, before the wedding prep started. That's almost 36 hours ago, Liam said, frowning. No wonder you collapsed. As Harper began to eat, and the food was incredible, restaurant quality, Liam busied himself checking her bandages and taking her temperature. His hands were gentle but sure, and Harper found herself studying his face as he worked. Are you always this nice to strangers? She asked. Liam glanced up at her. Are you always this suspicious of kindness? Yes, Harper said honestly. In my experience, people who seem too good to be true usually are. Fair enough. Liam sat back in his chair. For what it's worth, I'm not too good to be true. I'm just a guy who couldn't drive past someone who needed help. Why? Harper pressed. Why did you stop? Most people would have just kept driving. Liam was quiet for a long moment, and Harper could see him weighing how much to share. My wife used to volunteer at a women's shelter, he said finally. She'd come home with stories about women who'd been broken by the world, by men who were supposed to love them. She always said that the difference between life and death, hope and despair, was usually just one person willing to stop and care. Harper felt her heart clench. Used to? Sarah died 3 years ago, Liam said simply. Car accident on I-95. Drunk driver ran a red light. Oh God, Liam, I'm so sorry. Thank you. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the rolling hills beyond. The clothes you're wearing were hers. I hope that doesn't make you uncomfortable. Harper looked down at the soft nightgown, touched the delicate fabric. It's beautiful. She had good taste. She had the best taste. Liam turned back to her with a small smile. She would have liked you, I think. She always had a soft spot for fighters. Fighters? People who don't give up, even when giving up would be easier. Harper felt tears prick her eyes. I did give up. That's why I'm here. No, Liam said firmly. You didn't give up. You made a choice. You chose yourself over a situation that was wrong for you. That's not giving up. That's the bravest thing you could have done. Something shifted in Harper's chest, some tight knot of shame beginning to loosen. I need to call my parents, she said suddenly. They're probably worried sick. The whole wedding party, all the guests. I took care of it, Liam said quietly. Harper stared at him. What do you mean? I called the church this morning, told them there was a medical emergency. But my parents... We'll survive the embarrassment, Liam said gently. Harper, you don't owe anyone your happiness. Not your parents, not your guests, and certainly not a man who doesn't deserve you. Harper started crying then, not the desperate broken sobs of the night before, but quiet tears of relief. For the first time in months, someone was on her side. Someone was protecting her instead of pressuring her. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. Get better, Liam said. That's all the thanks I need. He moved toward the door, then paused. Harper, I have to work today, but I'll be back around 6. There are more clothes in the closet, Sarah's things, books on the shelves, TV remote on the dresser. Make yourself at home. Liam? He turned back. Thank you for everything, for stopping, for helping, for seeing me. Liam's smile was like sunrise. You're worth seeing, Harper Johnson. Don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise. After he left, Harper lay back against the pillows and looked around the room, really looked at it. I'll take good care of him, Harper whispered, then stopped, startled by her own words. Where had that come from? She'd known Liam for less than 12 hours. She was a mess, running from her own wedding, with no idea what she wanted from life. But looking around Sarah's room, wearing Sarah's clothes, Harper felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt like she was home. By the 3rd day, Harper could walk without crying, though her feet were still tender, and she moved carefully around Liam's house. And what a house it was, a colonial masterpiece built in the 1800s, with wide plank floors, original crown molding, and windows that looked out over rolling hills and old-growth oak trees. It was the kind of house Harper had dreamed about as a child, when she'd flip through magazines at the grocery store while her mother counted food stamps. She told herself that someday, if she worked hard enough and was smart enough, she might live somewhere like this. She just never imagined it would be as a refugee. Liam had left for work that morning with the same gentle instructions. Rest, eat, make herself comfortable. He'd been nothing but kind, never pushing for details about what had happened, never making her feel like a burden. But Harper could sense his curiosity, and she knew she owed him an explanation. That evening, as Liam changed her bandages with the same careful attention he'd shown for 3 days, Harper finally found the courage to speak. I need to tell you what happened, she said. Why I was on that road. Liam's hand stilled on her feet. Only if you want to. I want to. You deserve to know who you're helping. Liam finished wrapping the fresh gauze and sat back in his chair. I'm listening. Harper took a deep breath and began. I grew up poor in Woodbury. Not, we had to choose between cable and internet poor. Real poor. Eat cereal for dinner because that's all we have poor. My dad worked construction when he could find work, and my mum cleaned houses for rich families. She looked down at her hands, remembering the shame of wearing second-hand clothes to school, of pretending she wasn't hungry when other kids ate lunch. But I was smart. Really smart. I could solve math problems in my head that other kids needed calculators for, and I read everything I could get my hands on. My teachers said I had potential, that I could get a scholarship to college if I worked hard enough. And you did, Liam said. Full ride to Stanford studying economics. I was going to prove that poor kids like me could make it, that we could be more than our circumstances. Harper's voice got bitter. I was so naive. What happened? William Whitmore happened. She said the name like it tasted bad. We'd actually met as kids. My grandfather did odd jobs for rich families around Connecticut, including the Whitmores. William and I played together a few times when we were 8 or 9, but we lived in completely different worlds. Harper pulled her knees up to her chest, making herself small. We met again at Stanford when I was 20. I was this scholarship kid from nowhere, and he was... God, he was everything I thought I wanted. Handsome, charming, confident. His family owned half of Connecticut, hotels, real estate, investments, and for some reason he wanted me. What was he like then? Harper was quiet for a moment, remembering. At first, perfect. He took me to expensive restaurants, bought me clothes I could never afford, introduced me to his world. I felt like Cinderella, but slowly, I started seeing who he really was underneath all that charm. Which was cruel. The word came out like a physical pain. He'd tip servers a penny just to humiliate them. He'd make jokes about scholarship kids right in front of me, then laugh when I got upset. He treated poor people like they were a different species, something to be pitied or mocked, never respected. Liam's jaw tightened. But you stayed with him. My parents were so excited, Harper said, tears starting to fall. They saw dollar signs, security for their daughter, a chance for our family to finally have something. And his parents, she laughed bitterly. They loved me. Said I had good breeding because of my grandfather's military service. They thought I was the perfect girl to keep their son grounded. What about what you wanted? I was 23 and terrified. I convinced myself that maybe love wasn't supposed to feel like butterflies and fairy tales. Maybe it was supposed to be practical, safe. Maybe I was being ungrateful to want more. Harper wiped her eyes and continued. That's when I met Professor Frederick Sinclair. He taught my advanced economics courses, and he was... God, he seemed like everything William wasn't. Intellectual, passionate about ideas, interested in my thoughts and dreams. When he looked at me, I felt seen. Really seen. Liam's expression didn't change, but Harper could sense his disapproval. It started innocently enough. Extra office hours, discussions about my thesis, coffee after class. But Frederick was married with a family, and I knew it was wrong. I couldn't help myself. For the first time in my life, I felt truly understood by someone. How long did it go on? Almost 2 years, always secret, always stolen moments. He'd tell me he loved me, that his marriage was over in all but name, that he was only staying for his daughter's sake. All the things married men tell naive young women. Harper's voice got smaller. I believed every word. What happened? The night before my wedding to William, my grandmother came to see me. Harper smiled through her tears. Grandma Rose was always different. Some people called her psychic. Others just said she had intuition. She took one look at me in my wedding dress and said, "Baby girl, love isn't supposed to feel like a prison sentence." Smart woman. She told me that if I felt in my heart that William wasn't right for me, I shouldn't marry him. That I should follow my heart to my true love, no matter what anyone else thought. Harper closed her eyes. She said something else too, something that seemed like nonsense at the time. She said that through all the confusion and pain, my real love would find me. That I'd know him because he'd see me at my worst and choose to love me anyway. Liam went very still. But I thought she meant Frederick, Harper continued. I convinced myself that he was my true love, that I just had to be brave enough to fight for him. So you left William. I left William standing at the altar in front of 300 guests. Can you imagine? All those people, all that money spent, all those expectations. Harper shuddered. Instead of walking down the aisle, I walked right out of the church and drove to Frederick's house in Westport. And? Harper's face crumpled. He answered the door in his bathrobe, looking annoyed, like I was an unexpected bill collector or something. When I told him I'd left William for him, that I'd chosen love over security, he looked at me like I was insane. Oh, Harper. He said I was having some kind of mental breakdown, that the stress of the wedding and school had made me delusional. He offered to call his psychiatrist. Harper's voice broke. That's when his 6-year-old daughter came to the door, calling him Daddy, asking who I was. Liam reached for her hand. Jesus. His wife appeared behind her, this beautiful, kind-looking woman who asked if everything was okay. And Frederick just stood there, lying to her face, saying I was a confused student who needed help. Harper was sobbing now. 2 years of I love you. 2 years of you're the most important thing in my life. And he talked to me like I was a stranger. What did you do? I ran. I got in my car and just drove, with no plan, no destination. I ended up parking at some overlook and walking. For hours. In my wedding dress, in the rain, until you found me. They sat in silence for a long moment, Harper crying quietly, and Liam processing everything she'd told him. Harper, he said finally, his voice gentle but firm. Look at me. She met his eyes. What those men did to you was unconscionable. William used your financial insecurity to trap you in a relationship where he could feel superior. Frederick used his position of power to manipulate a young woman who looked up to him. Neither of them loved you. They loved what you represented to them. Maybe I deserved it. Maybe I was naive and stupid. Stop. Liam's voice was sharp. Don't you dare blame yourself for other people's cruelty. You were young and looking for love. That's not a crime. Harper stared at him, this man who'd rescued her, who'd cared for her, who was defending her more fiercely than she'd ever defended herself. Why are you so kind to me? She whispered. Because, Liam said, leaning forward and taking both her hands in his, you deserve kindness. You deserve to be seen and valued and protected, and anyone who can't see how extraordinary you are doesn't deserve to breathe the same air as you. Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition, a connection that went deeper than sympathy or attraction. Harper felt like Liam was seeing straight through to her soul, and instead of turning away from what he found there, he was moving closer. Liam, she said, her voice barely audible. Yeah? Thank you for listening, for not judging me, for making me feel human again. Liam lifted one of her hands to his lips and kissed her knuckles softly. Thank you for trusting me with your story. That night, Harper lay in Sarah's bed and stared at the ceiling, her heart racing. For the first time since Frederick had broken it, she could feel her heart beginning to heal. And for the first time in her life, she was falling in love with someone who might actually be worthy of her love in return. A week had passed since Harper's confession, and a routine had developed between them that felt as natural as breathing. Liam would wake early for his morning run, shower, and find Harper already in the kitchen making coffee and breakfast. They'd eat together, talking about everything and nothing. Current events, books they'd read, childhood memories, dreams for the future. Then Liam would leave for work, and Harper would spend her days slowly reclaiming herself. She'd found Sarah's home office, and, with Liam's permission, had been using it to work on freelance economics consulting projects she'd found online. It felt good to use her mind again, to remember that she was intelligent and capable, not just a trophy to be won, or a naive girl to be manipulated. In the afternoons, she'd explore the house and grounds. Liam's property was incredible. 5 acres of rolling hills with ancient oak trees, a small pond, and gardens that had been lovingly maintained. She could see Sarah's touch everywhere: the herb garden near the kitchen, the reading nook built into the old maple tree, the wind chimes that sang in the breeze. But Harper had begun adding her own touches too. She'd rearranged the living room furniture to make it more conversational, had filled vases with wildflowers from the property, and had started cooking elaborate dinners that filled the house with warmth and incredible smells. "You don't have to do all this," Liam said one evening as Harper pulled a perfect beef bourguignon from the oven. "You're supposed to be recovering." "I want to," Harper replied, and she meant it. For the first time in months, she felt useful, needed in a way that wasn't about what she looked like or who her family was. "Besides, when was the last time you had a home-cooked meal?" Liam thought about it as Harper plated their dinner. "Probably not since Sarah died." "That's 3 years of takeout and frozen dinners," Harper said, horrified. "Liam, you're a doctor. You know better." "I know," he said with a sheepish grin. "I just never saw the point in cooking for one person." "Well, now you're cooking for 2, Harper said, then blushed at the implication. "I mean, while I'm here, however long that is." Something flickered across Liam's face. Was it disappointment at the reminder that this arrangement was temporary? They ate by candlelight again, not because it was romantic, but because Harper had noticed that several light bulbs were burned out and had made a mental note to replace them tomorrow. But the flickering flames cast dancing shadows on the walls and made everything feel intimate and special. "Tell me about Sarah," Harper said as they shared a bottle of wine that Liam had been saving for a special occasion. "What was she like?" Liam's face softened immediately. "She was light. You know those people who just make everything better by being in the room? That was Sarah. She taught kindergarten and could make anyone laugh, even on their worst day. She sounds wonderful." She was. Liam swirled his wine thoughtfully. "She wanted kids desperately. We kept saying we had time, that we'd start trying after I finished my residency, after we bought the house, after we got settled. There was always something else that needed to happen first." Harper heard the regret in his voice. "I'm sorry." The day she died, she called me at the hospital. She was so excited because her period was late and she thought maybe we'd gotten lucky without really trying. She was on her way to buy a pregnancy test when that drunk driver ran the red light. Harper felt tears in her eyes. "Oh, Liam. I lost everything that day. My wife, my future children, my dreams. This house felt like a mausoleum." He looked around the dining room, at Harper's flowers and candles, at the way she'd made it feel like a home again. Until now. Their eyes met across the table, and Harper felt her pulse quicken. The air between them seemed to shimmer with possibility and unspoken feelings. "Harper," Liam said, his voice lower than usual. "Yeah, I need you to know that having you here, it's not just about helping someone in need anymore. You've brought this house back to life. You've brought me back to life." Harper's heart started racing. "Liam, I know it's complicated. I know you're still healing, still figuring out what you want. But I need you to know that what I feel for you." The landline phone rang in the kitchen, shrill and intrusive. Liam closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "I should get that. It might be the hospital." But as he stood to answer it, Harper caught his hand. "Wait," she said. "What were you going to say?" Liam looked down at their joined hands, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "That I'm falling in love with you, Harper Johnson. and that scares the hell out of me." The phone stopped ringing, then immediately started again. "Go," Harper said softly. "Answer it." "But Liam? We're not done with this conversation." Liam squeezed her hand and went to answer the phone. Harper could hear his voice from the kitchen, tense and concerned. "No, I haven't seen anyone by that description." "What? How did you get this number?" "No, absolutely not. Don't call here again." Harper felt ice-cold dread wash over her. She knew, without being told, what that call was about. When Liam came back to the dining room, his face was grim. "Who was it?" she asked, though she already knew. "A private investigator, working for William Whitmore." Liam sat back down and reached for her hands. "Harper, he knows you're here. I don't know how, but he's found you." Harper's carefully constructed piece shattered like glass. "I have to leave, right now. If William finds me here, he'll destroy you too. Your career, your reputation." Hey, look at me." Liam's grip on her hands was firm, grounding. "I'm not afraid of William Whitmore. You don't understand what he's capable of. He has money, power, connections. He can ruin anyone he wants to. Then let him try." Liam's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "Harper, I'm not letting you go. Not when I just found you. Not when we just found each other. But, no buts. We'll figure this out together, I promise." But even as Liam held her hands and made his promises, Harper could see headlights turning into his driveway. Expensive headlights. The kind that came with expensive cars driven by expensive men who thought they owned the world. "He's here," Harper whispered, terror in her voice. Liam stood immediately, his entire demeanor changing. Gone was the gentle doctor who'd been falling in love over candlelight. In his place was someone harder, more dangerous. "Go upstairs," he said quietly. "Lock the door and don't come out until I tell you." "Liam, please. Go. Now." Harper ran for the stairs as the doorbell rang, her heart pounding with fear and love and the terrible knowledge that her sanctuary was about to become a battlefield. And she was about to learn whether the man she was falling in love with was strong enough to protect them both. William Whitmore stood on Liam's front porch like he owned it. Everything about him screamed money and power. The perfectly tailored Armani suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. The Patek Philippe watch glinting on his wrist. The way he held himself like someone who'd never heard the word no and meant it. He was flanked by two men in expensive suits who were clearly security. The kind of men who solved problems with muscle rather than words. Behind them, Harper could see 3 black SUVs in the driveway, engines still running. "Dr. Sullivan, I presume," William said with a smile that never reached his cold blue eyes. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." Liam stood in his doorway, wearing jeans and the sweater Harper had been admiring over dinner, looking utterly unimpressed by the show of force. "Harper Johnson is not property," Liam replied calmly. "And she's not here." William laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "Please, doctor, we both know she's here. My investigators are very thorough, and frankly, your attempts at discretion have been amateur at best." He pushed past Liam into the house without being invited, his security following behind. William looked around the living room with obvious disdain, taking in the comfortable furniture, the warm lighting, the flowers Harper had arranged. "Charming," he said dismissively. "Very rustic. I can see why someone of Harper's limited background would be impressed." Liam's hands clenched into fists. "Get out of my house. Not without my fiancée." William picked up a framed photo of Liam and Sarah from the mantelpiece, examining it with mock interest. "Ah, yes, the dead wife. I did my research, doctor. Sarah Chen, kindergarten teacher, killed by a drunk driver 3 years ago. How tragic." He set the photo down carelessly, not bothering to put it back where it belonged. "I understand grief can make men do foolish things," William continued conversationally. "Desperate things, like harboring confused young women who've clearly had some kind of mental breakdown. Harper left you, Liam said, his voice getting dangerous. She made her choice. She was confused, emotional. Women get like that sometimes, especially when they're under stress. William walked to the kitchen, noting Harper's coffee cup still on the counter, her cardigan draped over a chair. The important thing is that we fix this situation quickly and quietly, before it becomes even more embarrassing for everyone involved. Upstairs, Harper pressed herself against the bedroom door, listening to every word. She could hear the casual cruelty in William's voice, the way he spoke about her like she was a problem to be solved, rather than a person with her own will. "You see, Doctor," William continued, "Harper made some very poor choices in the months leading up to our wedding. Inappropriate relationships with men in positions of power. Scandalous behavior that could ruin several reputations if it became public knowledge." "You're talking about Professor Sinclair," Liam said. William's smile widened. "Ah, she told you about her little affair. How refreshingly honest of her. Did she also tell you that Professor Sinclair is now cooperating fully with my efforts to bring her home?" Liam felt sick. "You're blackmailing him. I'm protecting reputations. Professor Sinclair has a wife, 2 children, and a tenured position to consider. He understands that Harper's episode needs to be resolved discreetly." William pulled out his phone and showed Liam a document on the screen. "This is a signed statement from Professor Sinclair detailing his inappropriate relationship with his student. Names, dates, locations, very thorough, very damaging. What do you want?" "It's quite simple, really," William said, pocketing his phone. "Harper comes home with me tonight. We have a quiet, private wedding ceremony next week. Just family, very tasteful given the circumstances. And everyone forgets this unfortunate episode ever happened. And if I refuse?" William's expression turned ice cold. "Then Professor Sinclair's statement becomes public. His career ends, his marriage implodes, his children grow up knowing their father is a predator who abused his position of trust. Harper's reputation is destroyed. No respectable employer will hire her after a scandal like this." He stepped closer to Liam, invading his personal space. "And you, Doctor? Well, I'm sure the Connecticut Medical Board would be fascinated to hear about a physician who harbors mentally unstable patients, who enables their delusions instead of getting them proper psychiatric care, who takes advantage of vulnerable women in crisis." Liam's jaw tightened. "You son of a bitch." "I'm a businessman," William corrected. "And right now, you're bad for business. Harper belongs with her own kind, Doctor. She's a project from the wrong side of the tracks who got ideas above her station. You're just the rebound fantasy helping her avoid reality. You're wrong." "Am I?" Ask yourself this. What does a brilliant, beautiful woman from Connecticut's elite really have in common with a small-town doctor playing house in his dead wife's shadow? The words hit their mark, and William could see it in Liam's face. "Harper!" William called toward the stairs, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I know you're up there listening. Come down so we can end this charade like civilized people." Silence. "Harper, every second you delay makes this worse for everyone. Professor Sinclair's family is counting on your discretion. Dr. Sullivan's career hangs in the balance. Is your little rebellion really worth destroying innocent people?" More silence, but William could sense her wavering. "I'll count to 10, he said calmly. "If you're not down here by then, I make a few phone calls. The medical board receives an anonymous tip about Dr. Sullivan's inappropriate patient care. Professor Sinclair's wife receives some very interesting photographs of her husband with a young student. Your parents receive a detailed account of why their daughter is really hiding, instead of honeymooning in Tuscany. 1. Upstairs, Harper closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. 2. She couldn't let Frederick's children suffer because of her. She couldn't let Liam lose everything. 3. 4. The bedroom door opened. 5. Harper appeared at the top of the stairs, wearing one of Sarah's simple dresses, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked like a woman walking to her own execution. "Don't," Liam said immediately, his voice desperate. "Harper, don't do this." "6," William continued, not even looking up. "I have to," Harper whispered, starting down the stairs. Each step felt like a betrayal of everything she'd found here, everything she'd started to believe about herself. 7. "Harper, please," Liam begged. "Whatever he's threatening, we'll figure it out together." 8. Harper reached the bottom of the stairs and faced William for the first time since she'd run from their wedding. He looked exactly the same. Handsome, confident, utterly sure of his own power. But now she could see the cruelty that lurked beneath the polished surface. 9. "Stop," Harper said, her voice barely above a whisper. William smiled triumphantly. "There's my beautiful bride." Harper looked at Liam, memorizing his face, knowing she might never see him again. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Like hell," Liam said. He stepped between Harper and William, and something in his posture made William's security guards shift nervously. "You want her?" Liam said, his voice deadly quiet. "You think you can just walk into my house and take her like she's a piece of property?" "Doctor, you're going to have to go through me first." William laughed, but there was a nervous edge to it now. "This is ridiculous. What could you possibly do against me? Do you have any idea who I am? What my family is worth?" Liam smiled then, cold and predatory, nothing like the gentle man who'd been caring for Harper. "Actually, William, I do know who you are," he said slowly. "The question is, do you know who I am? Some country doctor who's gotten ideas above his station." "My full name," Liam said, his voice carrying across the room like a death sentence, "is Liam Sullivan Fairchild." The color drained from William's face. Harper gasped. Even she recognized that name. Everyone in Connecticut did. "That's right," Liam continued, enjoying William's shock. "The Fairchild family. We've owned 60% of the commercial real estate in Westport County for 4 generations. We're the primary investors in Whitmore Industries' 3 largest clients." William looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. "You see, William, I chose to be a doctor. I chose to live simply, to make my own way in the world. But that doesn't mean I don't have resources." Liam's voice was deadly calm. "And if you ever threaten Harper again, if you ever even think about her again, I will use every single one of those resources to destroy everything your family has built over the last century." "You're bluffing." "Am I? Your father's law firm lease is up for renewal next month. Guess who owns their building? Professor Sinclair's tenure review is overseen by a board that includes 3 Fairchild appointees. And that private investigator you hired? He works for a company that my family could buy with pocket change." William was backing toward the door now, his security guards looking uncertain. "This isn't over," William snarled, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yes, it is." Liam opened the front door. Harper made her choice. She chose me, and I choose her. If you can't accept that, if you can't walk away and leave us in peace, then you and I are going to have a very serious problem. The medical board. We'll be very interested to hear about your harassment of one of their most respected physicians," Liam finished, "not to mention your attempt to blackmail a university professor and coerce a young woman into marriage." William's face was red with fury and humiliation. "You have no idea what you're getting into." "Actually, I do." Liam stepped closer, and despite being shorter than William, his presence seemed to fill the doorway. "I'm getting into a relationship with an extraordinary woman who deserves to be loved for who she is, not what she represents, something you never understood." He looked past William to the security guards. "Gentlemen, I suggest you escort Mr. Whitmore off my property before I call the police and have him arrested for trespassing and harassment." After they left, Harper and Liam stood in the sudden silence of the living room, both of them shaking from adrenaline. "You're a Fairchild," Harper said finally, I am. Why didn't you tell me? Liam turned to face her, and she could see vulnerability in his eyes despite the strength he just displayed. Because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not what my family owns. When I found you on that road, broken and beautiful and brave, you didn't know I had money. You didn't know I had power. You just knew I was someone who stopped to help. Harper walked to him slowly, like she was approaching something precious and fragile. Liam Sullivan Fairchild, she said, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. I fell in love with a kind doctor who saved me when I had nothing left to lose. The fact that you're also secretly powerful enough to destroy my enemies? That's just a really attractive bonus. Liam laughed, the tension finally breaking. So we're okay? We're better than okay. Harper stood on her tiptoes and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. We're free. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Harper was in the kitchen making coffee when she saw a familiar figure walking up the driveway, Frederick Sinclair, looking haggard and desperate. Liam, she called, her voice tight with anxiety. Liam appeared immediately, still buttoning his shirt from getting dressed. When he saw Frederick through the window, his expression hardened. Stay inside, he told Harper. Let me handle this. But Harper shook her head. No, I need to face this. I need to hear what he has to say. Frederick looked terrible, unshaven, eyes red with exhaustion, clothes rumpled like he'd slept in them. When Liam opened the door, Frederick practically collapsed against the frame. Harper, please, he said, looking past Liam to where she stood in the hallway. I need to talk to you. You have 5 minutes, Liam said coldly, stepping aside to let him in. Frederick stumbled into the living room and Harper could see his hands shaking. This wasn't the confident, sophisticated professor she'd fallen for. This was a broken man. I'm so sorry, Frederick said, the words tumbling out. For everything. For lying to you, for using you, for what I said that night at my house. Frederick. No, let me finish. Please. He sat heavily on the couch, burying his face in his hands. Whitmore came to see me 3 days after you left him. He had photographs, Harper. Pictures of us together that his investigators had taken. Meeting for coffee, walking across campus. That time we kissed in my office. Harper felt Liam tense beside her, but his hand found hers and squeezed gently. He said he'd destroy me if I didn't help him get you back. Frederick continued. My job, my marriage, my children's futures, everything I've worked for my entire life. So you signed his statement, Harper said quietly. I was terrified, not just for me, but for Emily and the kids. You know what an academic scandal would do to us. We'd have to leave Connecticut, start over somewhere else. Emily's been out of the workforce for 8 years raising our children. We'd lose everything. Frederick looked up at Harper with desperate eyes. But after what happened last night, after Whitmore came back ranting about you and some doctor who'd threatened him, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't be part of whatever sick game he's playing. What are you saying? Liam asked. I'm saying I'm done being his pawn. Frederick pulled out his phone and showed them the screen. I've already called the University Ethics Board and reported our relationship myself. I've told Emily everything, and I've contacted a lawyer about pressing harassment charges against Whitmore. Harper stared at him in shock. Frederick, your career is over either way, he said with a bitter laugh. The difference is whether I go down as a victim of blackmail or as someone who finally found the courage to do the right thing. He stood up and looked directly at Harper for the first time since entering the house. I need you to know that what I felt for you was real. But what I told you about my marriage, about leaving Emily, those were lies. Selfish lies told by a man who wanted to have his cake and eat it too. I know, Harper said softly. I think I always knew, deep down. You deserved better than me, Frederick continued. You deserved honesty, respect, Someone who would choose you openly and proudly, not someone who kept you hidden like a guilty secret. He glanced at Liam, who was watching him with guarded hostility. I think you found that now, Frederick added. The way he stood up to Whitmore last night. That's what real love looks like. Someone who will fight for you in the daylight, not just whisper sweet lies in the dark. Frederick moved toward the door, then paused. Harper, I know I have no right to ask this, but forgive me. Someday. Not for my sake, but for yours. Don't let what I did poison your ability to trust good men. After he left, Harper and Liam sat together on the couch in silence, processing everything that had just happened. How do you feel? Liam asked finally. Harper considered the question carefully. A month ago, seeing Frederick like that would have destroyed her. She would have felt guilty, responsible, desperate to fix his pain. Now, sad, she said honestly. Sad for his wife and children, sad for the mess he's made of his life, but not responsible, and not guilty. That's growth. That's therapy sessions with Dr. Peterson, Harper said with a small smile. Liam had insisted she see a counselor to help process her trauma, and it had been incredibly helpful. She's been teaching me about healthy boundaries. And how do you feel about us? About everything that's happened? Harper turned to face him fully, taking in his kind eyes, his gentle hands, the way he looked at her like she was something precious. Grateful, she said, for you saving me, for you protecting me, for you helping me remember who I am when I'm not afraid. And completely, terrifyingly, wonderfully in love with you. Liam's smile was like sunrise. Even knowing that my family has more money than God and I didn't tell you? Especially knowing that. Harper kissed him softly. Do you know how incredible it is to be with someone who chose to save lives instead of just collecting dividends? Who chose to help people instead of just getting richer? I love you too, Liam said against her lips. More than I ever thought possible. More than I knew I was capable of. What happens now? Harper asked. Now we build a life together. A real one, without secrets or threats or other people trying to control our choices. What about your family? Will they accept me? Liam laughed. My mother is going to lose her mind when she meets you. She's been trying to set me up with appropriate women for 3 years. She's going to take one look at you and start planning our wedding. And William? William is going to leave us alone, or he's going to learn exactly what the Fairchild name can do when properly motivated. Harper curled up against Liam's side, feeling safe and loved and free for the first time in years. Outside, autumn was turning the leaves brilliant colors, and she could hear birds singing in the oak trees that surrounded their home. Their home, because that's what this place had become, not just Liam's house or Sarah's memory, but their shared sanctuary. Liam? Thank you for seeing me at my worst and choosing to love me anyway. Thank you for letting me. And as they sat together in the morning light, Harper realized that her grandmother had been right after all. Through all the confusion and pain, her true love had found her. Someone who saw her clearly and chose her completely. Someone who would fight for her in the daylight and love her in the dark. Someone worth running toward instead of running from. 3 weeks later, Harper was finally ready to meet Liam's family. The Fairchild estate in Greenwich was everything she'd imagined and more. A sprawling colonial mansion on 20 acres of perfectly manicured grounds, with gardens that belonged in a magazine and a circular driveway that could accommodate a dozen cars. Are you sure I look okay? Harper asked nervously as they pulled up to the front entrance. She was wearing a simple navy dress that had belonged to Sarah, paired with pearl earrings Liam had given her for her birthday. You look perfect, Liam assured her, parking his BMW next to a Bentley and 2 Mercedes. And remember, they're going to love you because I love you. What if they think I'm a gold digger? What if they think I'm not good enough for their precious doctor son? Liam turned off the engine and took her hands. Harper, look at me. My family values character above everything else. My great-grandfather built this fortune by working 18-hour days in a textile mill. My grandmother grew up in a tenement in Hartford. They understand that worth isn't measured by your bank account. The front door opened before they could knock, revealing an elegant woman in her 60s with silver hair and Liam's same kind eyes. "You must be Harper," she said warmly, pulling Harper into an immediate hug. "I'm Elizabeth Fairchild, Liam's mother. Welcome to the family, dear." Harper felt tears prick her eyes at the simple acceptance in those words. Liam's father, Robert, was equally welcoming, a distinguished man who shared his son's gentle demeanor and thoughtful way of speaking. His sister Caroline had driven up from New York with her husband and twin daughters, and his brother Marcus had flown in from Boston just to meet Liam's mysterious girlfriend. Dinner was served in an elegant dining room that could have seated 20, but the conversation was warm and inclusive. Harper found herself relaxing as the family shared stories about Liam's childhood, his medical school adventures, and his dedication to his patients. "So, Harper," Elizabeth said over dessert, "Liam tells us you studied economics at Stanford. What are your plans now?" "Well, I've been doing some freelance consulting work," Harper said, "but I'm thinking about starting my own firm. There's a real need for financial literacy programs in underserved communities, and I'd love to focus on that." "That sounds wonderful," Robert said. "Have you considered applying for one of our foundation grants? We fund exactly those kinds of community programs." Harper looked at Liam in surprise. "You have a foundation?" "The Fairchild Foundation," Caroline explained. "We focus on education, healthcare, and economic development in Connecticut's rural communities. Your background would be perfect for our Rural Financial Literacy Initiative." I don't know what to say." "Say you'll consider it," Elizabeth said with a smile. "We need people who understand what it's like to struggle financially. People who can connect with families who are trying to build better futures." After dinner, Elizabeth took Harper on a tour of the house, while Liam caught up with his siblings in the library. The mansion was full of family photos and personal touches that made it feel like a home rather than a museum. "I want you to know," Elizabeth said as they walked through the portrait gallery, "that we haven't seen Liam this happy since before Sarah died. You've given our son his life back." "He saved my life," Harper said quietly, literally and figuratively. "That's what love should do, save each other." Elizabeth stopped in front of a portrait of a young couple. "These are Liam's great-grandparents, Thomas and Rose Fairchild. She was a seamstress, he was a mill worker. They built this fortune through hard work and treating people with dignity." She turned to look at Harper directly. "Money doesn't make you better than anyone else, dear. It just gives you more opportunities to help people. That's something Liam has always understood, and I can see it's something you understand too. Mrs. Fairchild. Elizabeth, please. And Harper, welcome to the family, officially and completely." Later that evening, as they drove home through the quiet Connecticut countryside, Harper was unusually quiet. "What are you thinking about?" Liam asked. "Your family," she said. "They're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Judgment, I guess. Condescension. The kind of people who'd look at my background and find me lacking." "And instead?" "Instead, they treated me like I was already part of the family. Your mother hugged me like she'd been waiting years to meet me. Your father offered me a job. Your sister asked me to be her daughter's tutor next summer." Liam smiled. "That's because they see what I see. Someone extraordinary who's going to make this family better just by being part of it." "I love you," Harper said suddenly. "Not for your money or your family or your connections. For you. For the man who stopped for a stranger in the rain. I love you too. For everything you are and everything you're going to become." They drove the rest of the way home in comfortable silence, both of them thinking about the future they were building together. 1 year later, Harper stood in front of the mirror in Sarah's old bedroom, smoothing down her wedding dress. But this time, it was her choice, her dress, her day. The gown was simple and elegant. Nothing like the elaborate designer creation William had insisted on. This dress made her feel beautiful and comfortable, and completely herself. "You look radiant," Elizabeth said from the doorway, carrying a small jewelry box. "I have something for you." Inside was a delicate pearl necklace. This belonged to Thomas's wife, Rose, Liam's great-grandmother. She wore it on her wedding day in 1923, and every Fairchild bride has worn it since. As Elizabeth fastened the necklace, Harper felt the weight of history and acceptance settle around her shoulders. "Sarah would have loved this," Elizabeth said softly. "She would have loved you. I found her journals after she died, and she wrote about hoping that if anything ever happened to her, Liam would find someone who could love him as completely as she did." Harper felt tears threaten her carefully applied makeup. "I miss her, and I never even met her. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense. She made Liam who he is, the man you fell in love with. In a way, she brought you together." The wedding was being held in the gardens of the Fairchild estate, with just immediate family and close friends. Harper's parents had flown in from Connecticut, and while things were still somewhat strained between them, they were trying. They could see how happy Harper was, how much Liam loved her, and that was enough for now. As Harper walked down the aisle, not running away this time, but running toward her future, she caught sight of Liam waiting for her at the altar. He was wearing a simple black suit, and when he saw her, his face lit up with pure joy. Frederick was notably absent, as was William. Both men were dealing with the consequences of their actions and had no place in Harper's new life. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of two people who have found in each other not just love, but healing, growth, and the courage to become their best selves." The vows they'd written were simple and heartfelt. Liam promised to love Harper through whatever storms might come, to see her clearly and choose her completely every single day. Harper promised to trust in their love, to build a future worthy of the man who'd saved her, and to never stop running toward him instead of away. When they kissed as husband and wife, Harper felt like she was finally, truly home. The reception was magical, dinner under the stars, dancing on the terrace, toasts that made everyone laugh and cry. But the moment Harper treasured most came later, when she and Liam stole away from their own party to take a walk around the gardens. "Any regrets?" Liam asked as they stood by the fountain where they'd had their first kiss 3 months earlier. "Just one," Harper said. Liam's face fell slightly. "What's that?" "I regret that it took me so long to find you. I regret all the time we lost while I was wasting my life on men who didn't deserve me." "Hey," Liam said, turning to face her fully. "You weren't wasting your life. You were learning what you didn't want, so you'd recognize what you did want when it found you. And what's that? A man who sees you at your worst and chooses to love you anyway. A man who will fight for you in public and cherish you in private. A man who will build a life with you instead of trying to fit you into a life he's already planned. Is that what you're offering me, Dr. Fairchild?" "That's what I'm promising you, Mrs. Fairchild." 2 years later, Harper stood in the kitchen of their home, no longer Liam's house or Sarah's memory, but their shared sanctuary, making breakfast and watching her husband play with their 6-month-old daughter in the backyard. Rose Sarah Fairchild was perfect in every way, with Liam's dark hair and Harper's green eyes and a smile that could light up the world. She was named for both great-grandmothers, the seamstress who'd built an empire and the teacher who'd taught them both about love. Harper's consulting firm was thriving, funded by a Fairchild Foundation grant, and focused on exactly what she'd dreamed of, helping families build financial stability and security. She'd hired 3 other consultants and was expanding into neighboring states. Liam had scaled back his hours at the hospital to spend more time with his family, though he still couldn't resist taking the most challenging cases. He said Harper and Rose had given him a reason to come home every night. William Whitmore had married someone else 6 months after Harper's wedding, a society daughter whose family needed his money and who needed her pedigree, Harper had seen the announcement in the society pages and felt nothing but pity for the new Mrs. Whitmore. Frederick had resigned from Stanford and moved his family to Oregon, where he was teaching at a small community college and trying to rebuild his marriage. He'd sent Harper a card when Rose was born, just 2 words: "Congratulations, peace." She'd kept it, because forgiveness was lighter than anger. As Harper watched her husband and daughter through the kitchen window, she thought about the night Liam had found her walking in the rain. She'd been running from a life that was all wrong for her, and she'd literally run straight into the arms of everything she'd been looking for, without knowing it. "What are you smiling about?" Liam asked, coming inside with Rose balanced on his hip. "Just thinking about how far we've come," Harper said, taking their daughter and kissing her soft cheek. 2 years ago I was broken and lost. Now look at us. "Now look at us," Liam agreed, wrapping his arms around both his girls. "Perfect." "Not perfect," Harper corrected, "but real, and chose, and fought for." "The best kind of love story," Liam said. "The only kind that matters," Harper agreed. That evening, after Rose was asleep and they were curled up together on the couch reading, Harper looked up at her husband and felt overwhelmed by gratitude. "Liam? Thank you." "For what?" "For stopping. That night in the rain, for being the kind of man who stops when someone needs help." Liam set down his book and looked at her with all the love in the world. "Thank you for being worth stopping for." Outside, rain began to fall against the windows. Gentle autumn rain that spoke of harvest and home, and the kind of love that saves you from yourself and shows you who you were always meant to become. And in their warm, safe house, Harper smiled and listened to the rain and knew that sometimes the best love stories begin not with a meet-cute or a fairy tale romance, but with one person choosing to stop and help another person find their way home. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what you were really looking for all along. Sometimes you have to run from the wrong person to run straight into the arms of the right one. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the person who saves you turns out to be the person you were always meant to save right back. This story reminds us that true love isn't about perfection or fairy tales. It's about choosing each other every day, especially on the hardest days. It's about seeing someone at their worst and loving them anyway. It's about building something real together instead of trying to fit into someone else's dream. Harper thought she was running away from love, but she was actually running toward it. And Liam learned that opening your heart again after loss doesn't betray the past. It honors it. Sometimes the road to happiness is long and painful and wet and dark, but when you finally reach your destination, every step of the journey makes perfect sense. And sometimes, the best thing you can do for someone you love is simply to stop and help them find their way home.